what I'd like to really model for you is I'm glad to hear the conversation and the fact that you use artifacts or objects in your classroom. And what I talk to teachers about, we have probably known those historical objects and artifacts. And we are familiar with them, but I think sometimes we don't recognize that students are not, and they may not have, as I did, family heirlooms to go through, or a historical reenactor to bring those in. And we begin to realize that that students may not have had that familiarity with documents and know what that is, or a family letter, or a buckle that you're talking about, and created this particular packet, and there's other on the commercial market to try to help do that. What I want to do here is kind of model a lesson for you if you're using those primary sources in the classroom for the first time. And I've had the good fortune in actually working with students in the classroom with the original materials that you're working with in your hand today. And I will assure you that students have as much respect for the original as they do the reproduction in your hand. And I'll explain to you how that works. The teacher that we work with to put this together is a middle school teacher, and really taught me a lot about the different ways that we can get deeper beyond using the reenactor or that document's introduction, is to actually use those documents to teach history and to teach it in a much more in-depth and engaging way. And that's what I'd like to share with you today, is you can introduce a lesson with a document, but if you actually use the documents throughout your unit, that they will come away with a much richer and deeper understanding of history and the topic you're teaching. And not only that, but they will remember it beyond the summer and beyond the fall and into years to come. I was taught when I was in sixth grade with a wonderful art teacher that taught the entire history of world art with original artifacts that she had collected from Egypt, Mesopotamia, reproductions. So I understand that as an educator, that you can teach with reproductions. And then imagine the gift that you're giving your students as you bring them to an institution where they can hold the originals in their hand. And that's really what we're going to sort of model for you when you come to Indianapolis on Wednesday, is that you can see the reproductions in your classroom, because we understand not everyone can come. But what that means when you come to an institution where you see those, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. We'll explain what happened. We have in front, and I don't, because the packet doesn't have enough for every single person, but usually what I put in your, and if you just sort of get a buddy, if you've got one, share one, and just grab one of the things I put. There's a little paper clip with a little white slip to it. This is the first lesson that's in the book. And Susan, we were talking about, you can do this. What you're going to see in that packet is all different kinds of methods, if you're not familiar, for using documents in the classroom. But the really first one is to get students familiar with holding a primary source in their hand. My favorite question to ask students is to raise your hand if you know what a primary source is. And certainly, 3/4 of the class will sit quietly, and the few brave souls that raise their hand will tell you it's the internet. Because for them, a primary source is the primary place, the first place they look. So we have to have a discussion, what is the primary source? And so that's really what you're going to see, or what is the primary source, and what is that reducible. Okay. So what I'd like for you to do, and those also you have to recognize, the students bring to the classroom the knowledge from past experience, and if you're introducing a unit for the first time, and certainly a primary source or a type of primary source for the first time, they may not have any idea what that thing is in their hand. So what Susan does, and again, she's a longtime master teacher, that little piece of paper is sort of the bridge for give you a little bit of background information, and what I call the little nugget. What the heck am I looking at this document for? Much like Kathy modeled this morning in terms of an artwork with those questioning skills. So you're sort of leaving them with a specific task about the specific document they have in hand. So I'm going to give you just a little bit to do this. We're going to model this. We're not going to go through the entire lesson, but take a look, with your friend, partner, buddy, total stranger, kind of look at that document together, look at the little piece of paper, and then we're going to do two things. You go through that activity, and then we're going to see what your reaction is as the student that you are, as a student in your 6th grade class, your 8th grade class, Because I get teachers that tell me all the time that this is so hard. And I said, the first couple times you do that, this is going to be hard because it's sort of learning how to drive with all the gears differently. And this particular one, you're going to learn maybe what the challenges that we're going to have. So take just a couple minutes to look at the document. Other letters, depending on that combination, you may have to go the intermediate. So that's the secondary sources we're saying. But looking at a primary, a transcription, and then an edited version or a summary or a more shortened narrative are all getting you to the rich history. But to me, if the student sees the original, they'll understand its original form and how do you move it along the line. And all of those are worth giving it a shot. If they need the bridging to help with the letter, the transcription, or the shortened version, my juniors, she takes a letter from our collection into the classroom. It's a detailed one like that. What she may actually do is put. Have you ever seen during World War II the sort of the censored letters where it's highlighted in blacks? Well, she'll do the reverse. Sort of think of a template, and you've got phrases that you want them to read. So depending on the reading level, the skill level, the letter, there's a lot of options that probably in the letter you're going to have to bridge that. If they're not good. We had a comment here, then we'll come over there.
I kind of telescope differently. I go from them out. I have kids who love to instant message and text, and I did it with the preamble to the Constitution. I made them text it in text speak to me. And I'm thinking, how cool would it be to take a short letter and get them to translate it into current, and then utilize their want to use their phones.
Yeah.
And at night, I'd say, I'd send the parents a text saying, your child is going to text me a letter, and they're like, yeah, right. But every kid, 100% of them do it. And I'm thinking, God, that'd be a great thing to do. I'd have to find a short thing to do it.
I've got a better one for you.
But they love it.
Yeah,
But they
great,
love
great
it.
idea. It's
Yeah.
pretty rough.
And just real
To
quick,
take that.
I've done that with the Cold War, Kennedy's the long telegram,
Yeah.
and I've had students having to put that into a text message and then explain how those, like what words you would use in order to do it that quickly and to have a powerful effect that it would need to have in order to kind of change, popular position in terms of, starting from this new Cold War thing. But that even for college students, they love that.
There's
You
a
do the same
new-
with Twitter too.
Yeah, tweets and
Yeah,
telegrams.
there's a lot of it.
There's a new book out called T-Mail, Before the Days of Email, and those are Lincoln's would stand in the telegraph office in Washington D.C. and wait for the reports to come back, and that would be another easily accessible to do if you don't have the original documents
Absolutely.
too. Get a
How
copy.
many of your letters are transcribed already?
Online, and Jane's going to show that she's going to show you sort of the online how to search. If they're online, many of those have transcriptions. In the packet themselves, those have transcriptions, and in some cases even the shorter version of them. So what you see there is about the same shape and size of what they are in their real life format, slightly smaller in some cases, a little bit bigger in others, and then transcriptions online or in your packet.
We have a high school teacher in Beaver County that allows juniors or seniors in their literature class to do an alternate mode for a final. So they can film a classic scene, they can draw it, they can write a poem, they can write what's called rap song, some alternate form instead of taking the test.
And I think we're kind of getting more into the digital mode too. So take that for a second and hold the thought of what are the alternate forms that we can do some of these. And I think you guys have a poster. Let's try this a different kind. And basically it's a Soldiers Wanted poster. And that poster, read the little question that it's asking on the very bottom, but yeah, right on this.
What does this poster say about Indiana soldiers? It says they're the best soldiers, have gotten more soldiers
And the
than
Army's
the other
making
states.
it then because they're the best.
Do you ever that compare and contrast? What immediately when I read that is the old Uncle Sam wants you during World War II and all the other ones. Don't you think that sort of wouldn't be a great comparison? Of Uncle Sam wants you. In terms of being able to do that. And I've seen other, especially in digital. A lot of students are really into the digital technology, and there's a lot of Blogster and other new online technology where you're having students create your own poster and do it online and share it. So there's your digital versions of that, or take it, here's the current one, switch it to a contemporary one, or for other, other wars, compare and contrast how those posters and to get the guys to sign up. And certainly, if you think different eras, the message was, we want you, and need you desperately, but they told that story a different way.
I was just going to say, compare it to some of our modern recruiting ads that are on TV.
I think someone, and I didn't see which one, had a political cartoon.
Yeah.
Did you have a political cartoon? What was the question on the political cartoon?
According to this broadside, what would be the price of the rebel terms of peace for acceptance?
And that is a totally visual one. Can I borrow that real quick? Yeah, and that's where we say the different levels of access. And yours is all text, but easier to read, not as difficult as the letter. That's sort of the easiest one. So the broadside, some of them have a little more, have a visual, and some of them are totally visual. And can I borrow this one in terms of access to different kinds of visuals? And I think of so many students that I encounter that really are not reading at their grade level. And I tell the students, that there are lots of people that this was actually written for people who, to understand what that document said without ever being able to read a word on it. Because the border are not random pictures. The border tells the story of what's in that document. And so you say, okay, tell me the story based on the pictures in this document alone. And they can tell you the story of the Emancipation Proclamation without ever reading a word of it. And so that's what I think when your selection of the images, we have dozens of collections, or in this case, many different versions of this particular document. But to me, this one is the most accessible to multiple, that differentiated learning that you're going at. This will help you get students engaged in a document, even if they're different levels and different ability of understanding written word or actually the printed one.
And
Go ahead.
One other thing that Danielle pointed out was the different fonts. That was really important too. The sizes and the different font they use would be really good for differentiation.
And so it's one of those things is, sorry.
Yes.
That is also a good art lesson for art's sake, because that's an illuminated manuscript. It just takes place in a different period of time.
Right, that's comparing change over time and different, different periods of time in terms of how they're.
But meeting the same needs.
And this one is sort of the same way too, is that the document, most students, when I first introduce them, they know what a photograph is. But you show a photograph from the 1860s and they don't, that's not the photo they're looking at. And the same thing, you show them a lithograph or a document, it does take them longer, much like art, just like the strategies that Kathy were talking about, that you can use those same strategies for a lithograph versus a painting to try to get them to look, because these are not easy pictures to decipher, but if you have that leading question, that guiding question, and use the visual strategies, I think you'll get them to look beyond, oh, it's a picture of, much like Kathy was modeling this morning. So you can use these for primary source documents well beyond a painting. That's one of many types where that's effective.
I was going to say, back with the letters, I think one of the reasons that students have so many problems with letters as a primary document is because people don't often write them anymore. And it's not just the digital media, which is obviously part of it, it's just not something that we do. And letters, especially during this time period, were intended to convey a tremendous amount of information in 2 pages. And so they had to write home and tell them everything that they could. And so in terms of context, I think that that's a critical piece that oftentimes it really escapes our students. They don't understand what the purpose of the letter was and why that was important. And I think you brought up such a good point in terms of students and kind of the way that they wrap their brain around primary documents. It goes back to the art as well. I think they're very intimidated with primary documents. I think it really scares them in terms of what it is, what they're supposed to be finding, what is the right answer, when am I going to get this right answer. And so I think as much as possible, taking away that intimidation, it makes it a more enjoyable experience.
And I'll close and then turn it back over to sort of how do you get students over that? I could have paid you $50 to give me that segue. How do you get students to be comfortable with those? And how do you do that? And I think you give them time to become comfortable with those. And when I first came to the Historical Society about 11 years ago, I had a group of 4th grade Indiana history students that were studying Civil War. And so I did exactly what we did here, only what the students were looking at were the original original documents that you're looking at on the table today. And there were, you know, in every class, there's two little boys that just are driving the teacher crazy, and of course, they sat down in the library together, head to head. And I sort of, you know, you sort of pick those kids out pretty quickly. And so I was just like you guys, passing out the documents, and I passed these two young fourth grade boys this folder. I said, "This one's especially for you." And I walked away, and you know, everybody's doing their thing. And you know, the two little boys who were sort of bouncing off the wall suddenly got really quiet. And this is the power of a document. Talking, quiet, heads together, file open, looking at the original source, and they're like elbowing, I can't believe it. And I went over, and again, it was intentional, and I said, "So what do you think?" And the boy was shaking. I'm not making this up. And he said, holding this letter, "I can't believe this. I can't believe this." Like, "It's Gatlin." And I said, "Who?" "Gatlin, the Gatlin gun guy." And so tell me what, the next time, I said, "All you need to do is to sign in the Gatlin research." So suddenly they were engaged, and it was not an easy document. We sat down together with the two guys who were into guns. I knew who they were. You guys all know who those are in your class and what their interests are. And all it took was the power of a document, not an easy one, to not only get them quiet, to get them engaged. 20 minutes later, because that's how long they were in the library. I mean, these boys were like, "We got to go find about this, we got to find about that." They were looking at the patent for the Gatlin gun, is what they were looking at. And so I said, no matter what that area is, so I think that's the key, is if you can engage them in a document and that speaks to them, that speaks to their interests, and again, speaks to the humanity that we have of death, dying, guns, gore, whatever their hook is. We got some great ones on medical history too, that you got hooked into what's the document. And they're open to fear. No fear on their part whatsoever. You know, give me another one, bring them on, bring them. You got more of these? Do you have more? There's 3,000 of these. So. I got a question over here and then I'll comment. Okay.
Is there any chance they go home and build one?